Chris Lee and Gavin Schoenwald of Southeastern 14 here to talk some bowl projections, playoff projections, all that. Gavin's having a hair day. He's been to Vegas. We were ready to go this morning. Thanks for joining us, my man.
Yeah, ready to go, man. Obviously, I know we're not doing the daily show anymore, but I feel like I've been itching to be back on and talk some ball. Was out in Vegas for Thanksgiving. My sister was out there in one of those little holiday basketball tournaments. And obviously it left a number on me, and that's what happens. And so we're here still to talk ball, but man, I'm excited to get into it today. Chris got a lot of stuff going on between, I know we touched on the coaching stuff and some previous Southeastern 14 videos, but also the bowl projections that we got today. Getting near the end. Been a long year and a fun year for sure. But ready to wrap it all up now.
Yeah, glad we could do this one more time. Hopefully you and I will do a few more of these, even if they're not live. But a reminder, our show is presented by our friends at Bet Online. The last of the major pro sports leagues is off and rolling. College basketball ready to go as well. Bet Online remains your number one top spot for all your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL, all in full swing. Bet Online is your number one source for all wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. All the hoops betting action, along with every sport available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's start with the playoff because we got to settle that before we get into bowls.
Sure.
And Brett McMurphy, these are the projections we're going to use today. Got the Rose Bowl. Michigan, Oregon, Georgia, Florida State as your teams. Gavin, we bind it. I think Michigan is going to be a clear participant there because Iowa doesn't have the offense to beat Michigan.
Yeah.
Georgia, I think, is going to beat Alabama, and if so, Georgia is going to be a shoe-in for the playoff. Oregon, I think if it beats Washington State, is going to get in too.
Yeah, this is actually
Florida State, Louisville. I don't know. I mean, there's even the thought that an unbeaten Florida State team might not make it. But what do we think of what he's got here?
So obviously, Chris, you and I looked at this before the show, and in my opinion, this is actually exactly how I see it playing out. Because what that leads to is obviously Michigan beating Iowa in the Big Ten championship, Georgia taking care of Alabama, and then Florida State taking care of business as well, as they should, against Louisville. But yeah, that wild card one is that Oregon-Washington, because it's that rematch of that game. It might have been the game of the year earlier in the year. That Washington won is the higher ranked team, and Oregon's favored by 9 points. I'm not sure if I've seen something like that, honestly, recently, in recent memory. But that's what it's going to come down to. This is exactly how I see it playing out. As we all know, in college football fans, this is probably not what's going to happen because chaos just gets even more and more likely to happen as the season comes to an end. Does Florida State lose that to Louisville? What does that do? Does Washington actually win? Does Alabama beat Georgia? And so this is the best case scenario for the committee because it creates the least amount of debate. But if a couple of these teams get upset in championship weekend coming up here, Chris, we could be leading to some pretty big arguments.
Well, what if Texas blows the doors off Oklahoma State and Florida State without its quarterback sneaks by Louisville? I mean, that's the one that I think you've got to watch.
No doubt. And I think for Texas especially because, and I actually think, I was watching on Saturday night that late Oklahoma State game. If Oklahoma State lost last week, Oklahoma was in the Big 12 championship. Yeah. And I actually think that would have helped Texas because if they can avenge their loss similar to what, Oregon's trying to do, that would be a little bit better than beating Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship. So, look, like I said, all chaos can happen. I think Texas has that argument because their strength of record's better. Their better win is probably better at Alabama. Strength of schedule, all those kind of things in terms of over Oregon. But if they find a way to beat Washington, then I think that they slide in because then they're beating an undefeated team versus, Texas still having that loss to, I guess, 2-loss Oklahoma now. So it's all kinds of stuff. Is it going to be recency bias? Is it going to be full body of work? Conference championships? I feel like we've had so many things that the committee says they value, but it also seems to change as well. It's all opinion based. That's just the truth of it. look, I'm sure they have some type of criteria, but there's a reason they meet for so long. It's because they're sitting in a boardroom and everybody's giving their opinion. It's all opinion based, and eventually they come to a conclusion. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, the biggest chaos one is if Alabama beats Georgia, right? Like that's going to be the one that creates the most chaos. And who deserves to be where, and can Alabama really leapfrog Texas after Texas beat them on their home field by double digits? I don't know. I don't know if I see that happening. And what's the reason we play the game? So all kinds of crazy stuff coming up here. It's going to make for an awesome championship weekend. I'm excited for Friday night, to see Oregon and Washington, and then obviously all day Saturday, I'll be glued to that couch.
Yeah, we're thinking a lot alike, because the next scenario I was going to bring up is if Alabama beats Georgia.
Yeah.
And Texas wins. Let's say that Oregon beats Washington as we expect. Let's say Florida State ends up unbeaten. Now, the easy way out would be Florida State to lose to Louisville. Then I think you slot them behind everybody else of the other conferences. But I mean, you get a one-loss Alabama, you get a one-loss Texas. I think you have to defer to Texas in that spot based on head-to-head at Alabama's place. But I mean, the log jam there. I mean, I guess at that point Georgia gets left out. I just don't see Michigan losing. That seems to be the safe one. But I mean, what do you do with one loss Alabama, one loss Georgia, one loss Oregon, one loss Texas? That's going to be that would be something.
That's what would really flip the script for this entire thing, because, and I said this a couple weeks ago or like a week ago on our live show, Chris, I think if Alabama beats Georgia, the SEC is not in the playoff. And that's real. It's real. And the reason it's real is because you can't, and no matter, and I'm not saying if they play today, maybe Alabama's favored, maybe Alabama beats them. But Texas beat Alabama in their house by double digits. You can't ignore that. You cannot ignore that. And so if Texas takes care of business, no matter what happens with Georgia, Alabama's not leapfrogging them. They're not. It's not going to happen. And so if there's one spot left, it's going to go to Texas before it's going to go to Alabama. If there's two, who knows? Maybe they get in. Maybe they both get in. But it's just going to create some real deal chaos, especially, then you start thinking about Georgia. Well, Georgia's won, 27, 28 games in a row now, and they just dropped one in the conference championship. They're playing an extra game. Do they get penalized all the way out of the playoff? It's going to be all kinds of crazy stuff, Chris. And so, hopefully, really the truth is the playoffs start this weekend. That's the truth. The playoffs start this weekend on championship weekend, which is great. And it makes it, is exciting and all those kinds of things. But at the same time, and this was a conversation we had on the Daily Show a couple of weeks ago, is the expanded playoff, I think, is going to be awesome, because you're going to have home and home playoff games. You're going to have, Oregon playing at Alabama and all, like in the deep winter and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's going to be awesome. But is it going to devalue the regular season? Because if you look at last weekend against Michigan, Ohio State, that was a playoff game in itself. That was a playoff game. That's not going to mean as much next year or the year after that, because whoever loses that game is still getting in. Look, I know the seeding will be different. They may not have home field advantage, but it's not like your season's over. I mean, when Ohio State lost, it was over. That was that was it. And so I really hope that when we move forward here in the future years, as awesome as the playoffs going to be with expanded and may, create a March Madness type feel where someone goes on a run there at the end, I really hope it doesn't devalue the games of the regular season, because we had some great ones last weekend.
Yeah, see, I'm taking the other view, because I just think it's a different era. I think with the portal, with NIL, it is even the playing field. We've talked about you've had 8-9 teams in competition in November for this. Yeah. And I think the log jam that we pointed out that could potentially happen, to me, is why I think this is the right time for a playoff. Because Alabama, well, let's say Georgia gets left out. Under one of those scenarios, Georgia's still good enough to win the whole thing, and you don't get that under the 4-team scenario. But anyway, on to bowl projections, because I know you don't have a lot of time. This is under, again, the assumption that Brett McMurphy has painted that your playoff teams are Michigan, Oregon, Georgia, Florida State. The Fiesta Bowl, he's got Washington and Alabama. I think that'd be a phenomenal matchup between two really terrific quarterbacks there. And we're just doing this from an SEC perspective. You've got Texas and Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. That would be fantastic. I've seen Missouri in the Peach Bowl, a lot of places. He's got Penn State, Tulane. It feels to me like an SEC team in the Peach Bowl would just kind of be where you'd go, but I don't know. I thought for a while that maybe Missouri to the Cotton geographically made sense. Certainly make a lot of sense to pit them up against Texas.
Yeah,
and Alabama somewhere. But yeah, that's what they've got. Could be orange, could be peach for Alabama, but Fiesta Bowl of Washington, Alabama, I think would be must watch TV.
Yeah, that would be a good one. That would be a good one, no doubt. And I think, here's the thing with Washington that's true is they have guys all over the place. They have Romo Dunes at receiver, obviously Penix at quarterback, but they haven't they played a 5-17 last week and won at the last second, and so they haven't looked extremely great recently. Alabama is surging. Obviously, what a miracle, nightmare, whatever you want to call it, at Jordan Hare happened on Saturday night. I mean, that was as maybe not all the way revenge for the kick six, but man, was it? We'll see how it ends, right? We'll see how this all ends and everything like that. But I could not believe what I saw, and wacky stuff happens in Jordan Hare, and so
yes,
and what Saban said, I think it's the first time they on the right. But man, yeah, we see all these games, and Washington, Alabama is going to be a good one. I've seen Penn State twice now on a national stage, see if they can do it, and they've flopped both times against Ohio State and Michigan. I would rather see Penn State get left out and Ole Miss, a 10-win team, be playing in a New Year's Six Bowl here, to be honest with you, Chris. Look, I know they already played Tulane this season, so it'd have to be a different matchup. At least I'd like for it to be a different matchup in the Peach Bowl. But maybe do you slide them in and get to play, Ohio State? What a game that would be, right? And Louisville, lost to Kentucky. Kentucky is the SEC's what? 6th best team, 5th best team, 7th best team, and your ACC, number 10 in the country, number 2 team in the ACC, lost to them. And so I would like to see Ole Miss, I think, in there, especially over Penn State. Look, Louisville's going to be in a conference championship game, so maybe they did earn their right to a New Year's Six Bowl. But seeing Penn State in there, I just see it and I'm like, I got to watch those guys again, to be honest with you. And so I would like to see Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and see what they can do in a New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'd rather see them in there than Louisville for sure, and maybe Penn State just kind of dull to me. They beat up on bad teams and good defensively, but not much offense against the big boys. Okay, now Brett McMurphy's got Ole Miss in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa. Yeah, anything involving Iowa, I don't know that I'm there for.
You know what's funny, Chris? What's funny is I was sitting there yesterday watching some NFL football. The Titans were playing on Fox, and so Fox was doing some advertisements for the Michigan game, and it was like, you guys all know, like when they do the advertisement for the commercial game, they're like, J.J. McCarthy and Michigan to keep their season alive after a big win in the Big Ten championship against Iowa. 11 o'clock on Central, like they just kind of dropped Iowa's name in there,
right?
And so like it's funny because this is the only conference championship game that we're totally just saying, yeah, okay, Michigan's going to get it. And that's a shame. That is a shame.
It is.
And I feel like it's been like that with the Big Ten championship for many, many years now. And then not only that, but let's rewind all the way back to that funky year with Ohio State when they had, JT Barrett and then Cardell Jones and all these guys. It wasn't about if Ohio State can win that Big Ten championship. It was about how bad can they beat them to get over TCU in the playoff. And sure enough, they did. They tried to hang 100 on them. And that's not what conference championship games should be about. And so, look, as you guys can tell, I've had my way with the Big Ten this year. Look, I think Michigan State and Ohio State are both elite teams. Obviously, Michigan got the better of them this past weekend. But you're right. Who's the third best team in there? Penn State, and they're not even playing. And they're dull, just like you said, Chris, and they're not even playing their conference championship. So, I don't know. I've seen enough of the Big Ten this year. Look, Ohio State, Michigan for sure, but everybody else just meh.
I feel like we need to put Penn State and Iowa in a corner somewhere. I don't know if they played this year or not. I know they're both Big Ten, but let them duke it out somewhere in a pillow fight.
Yeah.
That feels like the right solution.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Did you watch Nebraska and Iowa? The punts.
I did,
guys. That was so funny.
I did. Well, you should have seen. I was in a sports book in Las Vegas, and people were losing their minds because they had the betting the under or whatever. I think it was like 29, and it actually kind of they scored a lot early. It was like 10-10 or 10 whatever, but then it flattened out. And so, yeah, people. It's funny, man. People lose their minds over that kind of stuff, and I experienced that firsthand.
Okay, other SEC bowl projections here. Brett McMurphy's got A&M in Wisconsin in the Music City Bowl. That would be intriguing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I still, would they send them closer to the Texas Bowl maybe? That's where they've got Auburn and Oklahoma State in that. I mean, I don't know. I would rather – hey, let's flip it up. Let's send Auburn to Nashville in our area and let them play Wisconsin and take Texas A&M and let them play Oklahoma State in the Texas Bowl. That would be interesting. An old Big 12 rivalry renewed there.
Yeah, and look, Texas A&M obviously has a deep fan base, but I think they'd be less likely to travel all the way to Nashville with the state of the program, the coaching, and that kind of stuff, rather than having a local game in Texas where maybe some alumni can come to the game.
Yeah, we've got here Tennessee and North Carolina in the Gator Bowl. It seems like a good slot for Tennessee. That game would be intriguing if North Carolina shows up, which it really kind of didn't for the NC State game. But that's two teams that on the right day can score a lot of points, and that would be one where you could certainly see an offensive display if that were to materialize.
Yeah, I think that this matchup is a lot more intriguing. If we were talking about it 3 weeks ago, I think each team season's kind of fallen off the rails, and North Carolina for multiple years in a row now. My brother went to UNC, so I actually watched the Tar Heels a little bit more than your average non-conference team. The story of their season recently has been that, they lose games that they're not supposed to, and then they start out to be 8-0, 7-1, 9-1, and then they'll lose to Syracuse or someone that they're not supposed to. And I know they lost a game to Clemson as well, but had multiple chances to win that too. This is still an intriguing game because Drake May at quarterback. I still think, with all the hate that Joe Milton's got this year, he's still maybe as talented of an arm as anyone in this country, and so that'll be an intriguing one still in Jacksonville, but maybe not as shiny as it was a couple weeks ago.
All right, let's see. I'm missing somebody. Kentucky's got to be slotted somewhere.
Yeah, the ReliaQuest Bowl, Notre Dame, LSU.
Oh, there's also LSU. Yes, Notre Dame. That'd be a good one.
That would be a media member's dream right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Brian Kelly connection. That would be tremendous.
Mm-hmm. That would be a good one. I would like to see. I know this is not SEC, but I would also like to see a USC Oklahoma bowl game between Lincoln Riley, his old school, or do we see an Oklahoma Clemson where it's Venables versus Dabo? I think that would be also another good matchup. I don't know, and I don't know if we've ever really gotten an explanation. Maybe people don't care as much, but I would love to see. I think that the bowl committee or whoever selects these bowls could do a better job of really creating these matchups. Sometimes I feel like they just throw people in there. Let's create some storylines here, especially with what's going on. The biggest reason we're expanding the playoff is because multiple teams feel like they should get in and have a shot to win the national championship. But also, and this is just the truth, bowl games don't mean as much as they used to anymore. Yeah, guys are sitting out. People used to say, I mean, Chris, people used to say, oh man, remember when we had that season, we beat them in the 05 Sugar Bowl, even if it's New Year's Six, people don't care about that as much anymore. No. And so what can we do to create some more storylines, create some more juice? Is it a Venables Dabo matchup? Is it a Oklahoma Lincoln Riley matchup? I just think there's some stuff, and I'm not really sure what goes behind it. But there's some stuff that we can do to enhance bowl season a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean that could be a whole video. It's a new day and age in college football. I think you've got players can get paid. That's an incentive to play in bowl games. Yeah. You do or don't get money, whether you do or you don't. The TV is going to take more control over this. Right. Eventually, you hear talks of Super League. So I could see you having the playoffs as we're going to see it with the 12 team and sort of an NIT for lack of a better term for football, where the TV just says, hey, we're going to match up Notre Dame and LSU or whoever for reasons you just outlined. I mean, that's plausible to me, it seems. Yeah. So
you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I would say the last one I found Kentucky, Duke's Mayo Bowl against Duke.
Final Four game right there.
Duke, I mean, should be in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And one more thing that has nothing to do with the SEC, but There's a famous Toastery Bowl this year. Did you know that?
Oh, Pop-Tarts?
It was at the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and they've changed it to famous Toastery
No,
Bowl.
no, no. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying no. The Pop-Tarts.
No, it's the famous Toastery Bowl,
Wow.
December 18th in Charlotte. Not to be confused with the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Interesting. What famous? These bowl games are getting at. When are we going to have a Southeastern 14 bowl game? When are we doing that?
I think it'd be the Southeastern 16 Bowl.
Yeah, I guess it would be. Let's get some more sponsors, and we'll have our own bowl game. That'd be legit.
No, there's a Pop-Tarts Bowl, so I guess that's going head to head with the famous Toastery Bowl.
Yeah. You know, people love their pastries and toasters and whatnot, I guess. So
Who knew?
how about this right here? The DirecTV Holiday Bowl, Clemson, Oregon State. That'd be Klubnik versus DJU when he went running away.
Yeah.
There's some storylines that could make some bowl games really interesting here that are outside of this conference, obviously. But man, this could be a pretty good bowl season here. What else we got here? The Las Vegas Bowl. Man, I might have to go back to that. My boy Cam Johnson, Northwestern, is in that one against Utah. Man, that'd be 3 Vegas trips in 3 months. That may be overkill, but you know.
I don't know how I missed the famous Toastery Bowl. I mean, that just
the famous Toastery Bowl. NIU, Georgia Southern. That's a gritty bowl right there. That's a gritty bowl right there.
All right, let's wrap it up. We had some coaching changes over the weekend. A&M thought it had one coach, wound up with Mike Elko. As that one apparently fell apart. Mississippi State hires Jeff Lebby. Let's start with A&M.
Okay.
What a wild! I mean, think about this for a minute. You're Mark Stoops. You get maybe your biggest win that you've had at Kentucky. Certainly a top 5 win. You beat Louisville. That's part one of your day. Part two of your day is you think for a little bit you're going to be A&M's coach, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on which version of the story you hear, either Stoops decided he was better off where he was, or A&M
or the other side.
I tend to believe the other side, but who knows? I'm not there.
Yeah.
And then so you're A&M's coach for an hour or so, and then you're not. And frankly, I think that move, where that settled, seems like a better outcome for the conference. I don't know that Kentucky. I'm not saying Kentucky can't get a good coach, and I'm sure it would have, but I don't know. And I feel like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth because I tweeted out, you spend all that money to get rid of Jimbo Fisher.
Right.
You thought at that point, the move is, okay, they've got somebody who's going to be a splash hire.
Yeah.
That's not how it was going to go down with Mark Stoops. Again, excuse me, not saying that made a bad hire, but it's just not where the bar of expectations was. It feels like to me, like the conference is better from an overall standpoint with Stoops staying at Kentucky, and then Mike Elko comes in, a place where he's got some ties and I think can do a good job there.
Look, I got some opinions on this, and you're right. There's basically two things that either happen. Like you said, Stoops either truly had a change of heart and decided to stay home, or A&M basically got mauled by their fan base and pulled the plug last minute. I don't know what it was. I do think eventually the truth will come out. I don't know if that's even for us to
a lot of times it doesn't.
But
there's too many incentives for the truth to come out.
That's fair. But I eventually will have maybe a better idea. Maybe not the truth, but a clearer picture of what happened. So then they go hire Mike Elko, who is a great coach, was a great defensive coordinator, a guy that I played against when he was the DC at Texas A&M, respected in Aggie land, obviously did a great job with Duke. But the job he's done at Duke the past 2 years, and especially this past year, is exactly what Mark Stoops has done for the past multiple years at Kentucky. And so I'm not really sure why A&M fans, especially whether that's what happened or not, they're more content with Elko, it looks like. Why do you think that Elko is more qualified than Stoops? Because Stoops has done it. He did exactly what Elko did with Duke football, with Kentucky football, but sustained it for multiple years.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Elko is not going to be a great coach. I respect him as a DC. A guy I played against was super tough to figure out a lot of his stuff on that defensive side of the ball, and obviously did a great job with Duke. But you know, the body of work and the lifespan there has been maybe 2 years, maybe even a year that we saw this past year. Stoops has done it and brought back. Look how far they've come. And we've talked about all the time. The big narrative with Mark Stoops at Kentucky is, is this the ceiling with the resources that are at Kentucky football?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the situation. And so I'm that really confused me to look, I understand maybe it's not the sexy hire. It's not Dan Lanning. It's not, whoever, but he's done it. And so I'm confused. I'm confused why Elko is okay. And there was such outrage over Stoops, because what you're getting in Elko is what Stoops has done at Kentucky for multiple years, and what Elko's done for the past 2 years. I think it's a great hire. I've obviously seen some reactions from current players, former players. We'll see what happens. And I do think Mike Elko belongs in the SEC, so I'm happy to see him back.
Well, I think it's two things, and I think it's in this order. It's familiarity, and this is just me speculating, looking at it from the outside, and just knowing how human. Like you saw it with Auburn, Kevin Steele. Well, Kevin Steele's track record as head coach had been horrible, so it's not apples to apples here. But the point is, the boosters knew him; they were comfortable with him. They thought he could sell Auburn the way Auburn deserved to be sold. I think there's some similarities here. Number two, and again, I think that this is where. And I was guilty of doing it too. He's 35 and 55 against the SEC. But Mike Elko has not had a track record in the SEC to be a 20 games below 500 coach. And again, that's not fair, because I know what he took over at Kentucky.
Yeah.
But optics are sometimes optics. When your bar is set at that point where A&M's was, where they're thinking out of the box, Dan Lanning, Dabo Sweeney, somebody like that. He's not coached in the SEC for the losses to pile up.
Yeah, but he, at the same time, and you're right, because I've seen that too. But you went and hired a guy whose best year and his claim to fame is 7-5, which is what just got your coach fired. Look, is there more resources and probably a way higher of a ceiling at A&M? Absolutely. Look, I'm not blind to that. But if you're if people are going to argue, and when I say people, I mean obviously Texas A&M fans, that Elko is more qualified, not better, but more qualified, and that couldn't imagine them hiring Mark Stoops. Well, his best year, I mean, they finished where in the conference here? I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th in the ACC. And so, and I know it's Duke. Look, this isn't, it's not like they got a guy from, I don't know, Penn State or something like that, or Oregon and Dan Lanning. Like, maybe that is Duke's ceiling in football. But it's not like you went and hired some guy who just did a football transfusion and all of a sudden Duke is playing in the ACC championship. That's not the level of team that they were this year. Like I said, look, I hope that Mike Elko is successful at A&M, because I think the SEC is better when A&M's playing really well too. But if you're paying $77 million or whatever the heck it was for Jimbo Fisher to leave, yeah, I guess we were all expecting maybe a sexy hire and Dan Lanning or whoever it was, and they went out and get Mike Elko. I hope he's successful. I really do. I'm a fan of him, and I've had some buddies who play at Duke as well, who are sad to see him leave, but are fans of him as well.
I'm going to give you a similar situation here, okay? And it's not exact for a number of reasons. But going back to your alma mater, Vanderbilt. Penn State hired James Franklin away from Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Where he was about 10 games over 500-ish. I guess, they had gone about some of that the Mark Stoops way, where they scheduled soft early. The league was down a little bit. Whatever thing you want to hold against James Franklin there, he won at a level nobody's even approached before or since. Mike Elko's 16-9 at Duke. Not an easy place to win. David Cutcliffe had done a solid job, so it's not exact, because Cutcliffe had won there at a level where Duke hadn't won in a while. It wore off after a while. He got old, whatever. They moved on.
Comparison. It's a great comparison.
But yeah, I mean, in different personalities. Franklin was an OC, Elko's a DC. And then you don't have although Franklin was from Pennsylvania, so there were some ties there. Yeah. But that's, if you want a little bit of a rebuttal, there's sure. A comp, and that one worked out pretty well. So
yeah, and again, look, I'm not saying that he's not going to be successful. I know Penn State hasn't necessarily gotten over the hump or won the big games, but man, look how far they've come from the deep cellar they were in, especially after all those, punishments and whatnot, what they went through. And so, yeah, like I said, I hope Elko is successful. I think it's a good hire. I think there's maybe some sexier hires out there, but at the same time, and I saw this as well, is A&M. A lot of what A&M gets is it's a different fan base with the military background, and it's all that you need someone who fits that mold. And I think that they were maybe getting people in here, or maybe wanting people in here who didn't fit that mold. Mike Elko fits that mold, fits that culture of not only that college town, but that team and the university. And so, who knows? Maybe we'll look up here. We're having a show on Southeastern 16 in 2-3 years, whatever it is, Chris, and we're talking about how this was the greatest hire ever, and Mike Elko's fighting for SEC West championships.
Here's another difference. Mike Elko, 46 years old. Mark Stoops, 56. Now, I think sometimes that gets overdone a little bit because it's not like coaches go somewhere and stay for 20 years. Those are rare, but schools tend to gravitate towards younger hires, and so there was that also. Other one to talk about before we go. Speaking of young, 39-year-old Jeff Lebby is now the coach at Mississippi State. Feels a little Dan Mullen-ish. That's the last guy that's worked there really well.
Yep.
Hire a guy who'd put up big offensive numbers, never been a head coach. That worked extremely well for Mississippi State. And did they get a guy with head coaching experience? No, I get that. But you even have some guys, Tom Herman, prime example. Sometimes an established head coach, all the money in the world you want to be. Jimbo Fisher, prime example.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just does not work, even if you go and get that guy. So is there risk there? Yeah, but I can also see some parallels. And Mike Leach, for whatever that was worth, it was a little bit different offense, but that they left on a good note before his untimely passing a year ago. So I tend to like it. I can see the reasons why not. I'm a little concerned about the situation he's walking into there.
Yeah.
In terms of there's been now 3 head coaches in 11 months and different systems and ways of doing things. Wow. But there's also some familiarity having been at Ole Miss as the OC in state. And all in all, I think it was a good move for them.
Here's my quick take, because I gotta head out after this. But I'm really, really excited about this hire. And the reason so is because we sat on this daily show, Chris, a couple weeks back, and we talked about, who does Mississippi State need to go get? And me and you talked a lot about Jamie Chadwell, an innovative offensive mind that gives them a chance to score points against these teams that have, maybe better Jimmies and Joes in this conference, Alabama, LSU, not even this conference, but that division. And they're playing every single weekend. And Jeff Lebby does exactly that. What he's been able to do with Dylan Gabriel in Oklahoma, what he did before when he was with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, how awesome is that Egg Bowl going to be this year? I'm really, really excited for Mississippi State. And, you get a guy like that who is obviously well beyond his years in terms of wisdom of the offensive side of football and creative as can be. You give yourself a chance at least. Because otherwise, if you're not scoring points, you ain't got a chance. You ain't got no chance. Yeah. If you're scoring points and finding innovative ways, look, you may not have 10 5-stars in your roster. You may not have 15 4-stars, whatever it is. But you give yourself a chance if you get, creative enough on the offensive side of the ball and able to score points, and that's exactly what he does for Mississippi State. And you're right. It's similar to Dan Mullen. We saw that a little bit with his creative play calling style with Dak Prescott. Can Lebby go out there and find a guy that can truly run his offense to perfection? Probably not going to happen in year 1, maybe year 2, even year 3, but I expect some momentum to get built down there in Starkville.
That's a great point. The Egg Bowl could be super fascinating in ways it hasn't been since Mullen and Hugh Freeze locked horns and that one. But yeah, Jeff Lebby against his old boss Lane Kiffin would be, I think must see TV for a rivalry that's always spicy, but sometimes a little lacking in on field action. I guess. I mean, this year 17-7. I was expecting better than that, but that's what we got. But yeah, that's a fair point. Gavin, I know you've got to go, so I'll let you do that. Thank you to everybody for watching. God bless you. Have a great day, and we appreciate you watching Southeastern 14 presented by Bet Online.